what we were talking about.
Well, we were talking about your mother's parents.
Yeah.
You called them Grandpa and Grandma,
Mm-hmm.
and you said you saw them how often?
Oh, not very often. I'd say no more than maybe 2 or 3 times a year. I remember it sometimes. Grandpa would walk out to the farm, and I know I was telling you he was on he worked on the railroad. He had tried farming. They came out of Missouri when Mother was a little baby, and she had, let's see, there was Aunt Beanie, and then Aunt Corey, and Aunt Addie, and Aunt May, and Mother. There was 5 girls and just the one boy, Willie. And Willie was between Mother and Aunt May, if I remember it just correctly. And they came out of Missouri and settled down toward Mansfield, which was 25, 30 miles from Greenwood. And then eventually they moved up to Greenwood, and Grandpa worked for the railroad, and they lived in what was called a section house, which belonged to the railroad. And they lived there. They lived there till Grandpa died. And it was just a little house, long, slim house up on up the section of Greenwood that they called Home Edition. And we'd go sometimes, but not very often. And then I know one time we went to see them at Aunt Deanie's house, and she lived down in town in Greenwood, close to town, in a big old house, and Grandma and Grandpa was there, so we saw them then. But when we went, the one thing we always liked at Grandma's house was she always had biscuits, leftover biscuits, in a little tin about so big with a lid on it, and up on the stove. So we always raided the biscuit tin whenever we went to see her.
What was your relationship like with them?
Really good, but it was not as close as with Granny and Granddaddy, because we saw them so much more. And but Grandpa was a really nice man. Everybody liked him, but he never would go to church or anything like that. He didn't believe in it. Grandma didn't either. So.
Didn't believe in God, or didn't believe in...
They believed in God, but they didn't believe in going to church. They just never thought it was necessary that they had to go to church. And Grandma would tell some tales. She told tales about where they lived in Missouri and the things that happened to her in Missouri. Now, Grandpa never talked too much to us. He was real nice to us, and we loved him. But she was never. She was the one that always did all the talking. Of course, a lot of it came from after Grandpa passed away. Grandma lived with Aunt May for a while, and then after that she lived with Mother from the time I was about 15 or so until she passed away. So we got closer to Grandma that way than we had in the earlier years. But she would tell us stories about Civil War. She could remember the Civil War. She could remember seeing the soldiers with their guns and things like that. She said one time they were hiding in she and her sister was hiding in the woodpile, and some soldiers came along with their guns and everything, but they didn't bother them, but they were scared. And she only had one sister, and that's all she ever talked about. So one sister's on, and she died before they left Missouri, I think.
So they were in Missouri when the soldiers came through.
Yeah.
Any idea if those would have been Union or Confederate?
No, but she did. I don't know that she ever knew, what they were. They were just soldiers and it was during the Civil War.
Coming through,
yeah.
and scary time for a little kid.
Yeah. And then she talked about one time she had gone to a neighbor's house, and they had to walk through this woods to get back home, and usually they try to get home before dark, but they'd gone for some reason, and they didn't get home before dark, and she said there was a panther followed them all the way home. You know, that I don't know what they call it. They still call them panthers or some kind of bobcats or what, but they will follow you. Would back then, I guess they would still in the wild. They would follow you they go through the trees while you were traveling. I guess if they were hungry, they had a meal. But she said they ran all the way home while that panther screamed and screamed, and they were really scared. So she used to tell us about that. And she was cautioning us more than anything else to watch out for wildlife. Of course, there wasn't anything like that around where we were, but she was really afraid of it.
So the Dunns came to Arkansas from Tennessee when it started running out of
farmland.
And then the Robertsons had come from Missouri.
Grandpa was looking for a place where he could raise his family, you know, and get a job or work on a farm or do whatever, you know, have a farm. And he farmed for a few years when they first came there, and then moved to, got a job working other places.
I remember Grandma Dunn telling me that they traveled from Missouri to Arkansas in a covered wagon, old Conestoga wagon, right?
Yeah.
When she was about 5?
She wasn't that old.
Not even that old.
Grandma, she said Grandma held her on her lap most of the way from Missouri. So I don't remember just exactly how old she was, but she was so little that she sat in her lap most of the way home, or most of the traveling time.
So how'd your parents meet each other?
At some kind of a party given by a friend, both of them there. Greenwood was a small little town, and some of her friends and his friends knew both of them, and they met there and started dating after that. And I've got a lot of pictures of them back whenever they were dating, and it's all in that book that I've made. And tried to collect a lot of stuff to tell our history.
Did you have much warning that your father was going to die?
No.
You didn't know it was going to end in his death?
As kids, they never told us anything. And I know the day that he passed away, I remember sitting on the front porch because he was delirious. And I was sitting and up to that time it was hot weather, and one of us kids was always having to fan him because we didn't have any air conditioning, electric fans, we didn't even have electricity. And so we'd fan him with a fan that we had, and but that day he was so bad and he was delirious, and he worried all day that somebody wasn't taking care of his pigs, and the sow had baby pigs, and they needed taken care of, and he could hear them squealing. Well, there was, you know, it wasn't. It was just in his mind. And people in those days came and set up with the sick, and we'd had somebody there almost constantly for a couple of weeks because he was so bad. But and we didn't know that he was going to die. We just knew he was real sick, and they didn't tell us until after he had died that night.
Where was he when he died?
At home in his bed.
And you found out the next morning?
No, they woke us up. They woke us up.
Who woke you up?
Mother did.
Mm-hmm.
And told us that Daddy had died. Well, we hardly knew what death was, other than that once you say you're dead, you know, they were no longer there, and you put them in the ground. And in those days, we were not nearly as wise
about things in the world as kids are nowadays, because our world was very, very small. It was the farm and one trip to town maybe every. Well, Daddy would go every week, but gosh, us kids didn't get to go maybe once a month. He'd put us all in the wagon and take us to town and let us have one nickel. And we had got one nickel and got to go buy candy or whatever we wanted.
What could you get for a nickel?
A big sack of candy like that. we liked those, what do they call them nowadays? I hate to use the word, they used to call them nigger toes. They were a round candy like that was white in the middle and chocolate on the outside. And we always got those because they were the cheapest kind of candy we could buy, and we got more of them.